children, welcome back to another session of bio class from Hayagrew Foundation. So in the last session we had learned about nutrition in organisms and the different ways by which organisms obtain nutrition. So in today's class we'll be learning about how these nutrition which is obtained is utilized by the body. So whenever it is a term which is asked like respiration, what is respiration if it is asked to define? In the lower classes you have learned that respiration is a process of taking in air which is rich in oxygen and giving out air which is rich in carbon dioxide. But apart from that, respiration means something more. So what is respiration actually? Respiration is the process of breaking down the food in the cellular level. So whatever nutrients are obtained by the organisms, those should be broken down in order to release energy or produce energy which is necessary for maintaining the metabolic activities of a organism. So that is what you call it as respiration. Instead of it just taking in air or giving out air which is rich in carbon dioxide, it is just breathing, which is a process of or a step of respiration, but respiration will include breaking down of the food in the cellular level. So in different organisms there are different mechanisms for obtaining energy from the food. So in certain organisms there is usage of oxygen in order to break down the food. So oxygen is used and food is completely broken down. So in these concepts wherein or in these processes wherein food uses or the organisms use oxygen to break down their food is what you call it as aerobic respiration. And in certain organisms without using oxygen there will be breakdown of food, and that is what you call it as anaerobic respiration. So let us understand what are aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So usually the energy source which is used will be glucose. So glucose, if it is broken down in presence of oxygen, it is aerobic respiration, and if it is broken in the absence of oxygen, that is anaerobic respiration. And anyway, anaerobic respiration will have further two types. We will learn all those things. So before glucose is converted into energy, there is an intermediate product which is formed, or an incomplete breakdown is done in the body cells or in the cytoplasm particularly. So that is what you call it as pyruvate. Pyruvate is the intermediate product of glucose breakdown, and it happens in the cytoplasm. So coming to the formula of pyruvate, it is C3H4O3. So you can observe that glucose, this one, it is a 6 carbon molecule. So you have the formula of glucose as C6H12O6. So this is a 6 carbon molecule. So it undergoes incomplete breakdown, that is it forms a 3 carbon molecule. 2 pyruvate molecules will be formed here, and a little bit of energy is released here because it is still incomplete breakdown. Further, in absence of oxygen, as we just discussed about absence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration. So one classical example of anaerobic respiration is yeast. You know yeast is a fungi, single cellular fungi, and here what actually happens is it results in the formation of ethanol, 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 and carbon dioxide, and energy is released. So you can observe that ethanol is 2 carbon molecules. That means here also complete breakdown of pyruvate has not taken place. So again energy released is less, and this very important carbon dioxide is released here because of the breakdown. So energy released here per glucose molecule will be only 2 ATP. So ATP is the energy currency of living organisms. So after the food is broken down, the energy is produced in the form of ATP. ATP means adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy currency of all living organisms. Okay, so only 2 ATP, which is otherwise equal to 54 kilocalories of energy. Only 54 kilocalories of energy will be produced here in case of yeast cells. So this is called as alcohol is produced here, you can also term this as alcoholic fermentation. This reaction, anaerobic respiration, is also called as alcoholic fermentation. So this is very important. It finds its application. You can also have a question here. Anaerobic respiration is a boon for pharmacy industry. So that's an applicable question which can be asked, because you know it can be used in breweries because of the production of ethanol. It can be used in the pharmacy industry is also wherein certain drugs will be obtained from bacteria as well as yeast which take up anaerobic respiration. The second concept is again pyruvate, which is an intermediate product. It can undergo complete breakdown by using oxygen. So that is in case of mitochondria, the complete breakdown will be taking place in all higher organisms. So here there is complete breakdown. You can observe that completely it has been broken down into carbon dioxide, water and energy. As there is complete breakdown here, energy released will be more per glucose molecule. So it is 38 ATP molecules, or which is equal to 686 kilocalories of energy. So it is more energy efficient. Aerobic respiration is more energy efficient because there is complete breakdown and there is release of more energy. Okay. In case of certain times, in case of muscle cells, when there is vigorous actions taking place, for example, if a person is involved in lot of exercise or running or any other physical strenuous work, if he is just taking up, then in case of muscle cells there will be shortage of oxygen supply. So at that time again there can be formation of lactic acid. So lactic acid is a product which is formed by incomplete breakdown of this pyruvate. You can just see that there is just the alteration of structure here. Again carbon 3 molecule itself will undergo change in its structure, forming lactic acid whose formula is C3H6O3. So there is no much breakdown here. So there is formation of lactic acid and energy. There is no carbon dioxide released here. So this lactic acid gets accumulated in the muscle cells and it results in muscle cramps. So again one more question what they can ask you, what is the chemical or what is a compound which is used or which is produced in the muscles which leads to muscle cramps? So that is lactic acid. Otherwise they can also ask a question like, how is that after a person takes up strenuous exercise, he has muscle cramps, and over a period of rest, how does it get relieved? So that is that when he takes rest or when he sleeps, this lactic acid will undergo complete breakdown because of the supply of oxygen, and there will be elimination of lactic acid from the muscle cells which relieves the person from the muscle cramps. So those are the applicable questions which can be asked, and this is very important concept for your 2 marks question. This is what you call it as write a schematic sketch of glucose breakdown. So these you will be writing glucose, which is the first 6 carbon atom, and in cytoplasm you will mention the first step. So the first intermediate product. For 1 mark they can also ask you what is the intermediate product which is formed in glucose breakdown also. So that is pyruvate, and 3 instances you will be giving. One is absence of oxygen in yeast, which results in formation of ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy, and lack of oxygen in muscle cells results in lactic acid, which is responsible for muscle cramps, and energy is released. Again energy is less, it is released over there because of incomplete breakdown and presence of oxygen in mitochondria, which results in carbon dioxide, water and energy. Another important question is that they can ask you to differentiate between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So you just do 2 columns, and what you have learned now you just go on jotting as points. So first point will be aerobic respiration is a method of respiration which takes place in the presence of oxygen, and on the other hand you will write it as absence of oxygen for anaerobic respiration. Complete breakdown of food will take place in aerobic respiration. Incomplete breakdown of food will be taking place in anaerobic respiration. Less amount of energy is released in anaerobic respiration, more amount of energy. You can also mention 38 ATP molecules or 686 kilocalories in case of aerobic, and 54 kilocalories or 2 ATP molecules in case of anaerobic. So here products will be, or the final products will be confirmed here, that is CO2, H2O and energy itself in case of aerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration end products may vary. So these are the things, and you can also give examples. In higher terrestrial organisms aerobic respiration will be there, and in lower organisms as well as muscle cells you can find anaerobic respiration. Now coming to understand respiration in case of plants. So you know plants are also living organisms, they need to respire, they need to get their energy supplements for or energy supply for their activities. Though they do not need energy as much as we all need, they also need certain amount of energy. So they also take up gaseous exchange, and in case of plants it's very easy for respiration because of the stomata which is present, and the air spaces are present between the parenchymatous cells which are present in the plant leaf or anything. So when stomata allows the gaseous exchange, when carbon dioxide is produced as a respiration or oxygen is taken up for breaking down food in the mitochondria of the cells, plant cells, then immediately carbon dioxide is released. During daytime, the carbon dioxide which is produced because of respiration in case of plants is used up for photosynthesis, because it forms the raw material for making of glucose. But otherwise during night time, when carbon dioxide, when light is no more available for the plants for photosynthesis, the carbon dioxide which is produced will be released out. So here simple diffusion is enough in case of plants for exchange of gases. Then talking about other organisms, lower organisms like amoeba, which are single celled organisms. So that entire surface of the single celled organism amoeba is exposed to immediate environment here. So diffusion of gases can take place wherein respiration can be met over there. So simple diffusion is enough. From higher concentration, that is from the outer surface, oxygen can diffuse inside, and carbon dioxide which is produced inside the amoeba can diffuse outside based on the diffusion gradient. Next one, you have fishes, which are again aquatic organisms. So that fishes are aquatic organisms, and they do depend on the oxygen which is found in dissolved form or in the soluble form in case of water. So if fish have to take up respiration, they need to breathe faster because they do not have oxygen which is supplied in greater quantity for them. Fairly low concentration of oxygen is found dissolved in water when it is compared to atmospheric oxygen. So that is why you might have seen your fish open their mouth frequently. So very fast they will be opening and closing their mouth in order to allow the oxygen supply or take up the water in order to exchange the gases near the gills. So that in fish there are special respiratory structures which you call them as gills, and the gills are supplied with extensive blood vessel supply. Blood will be supplied over there for exchange of gases, and when the water enters through the buccal cavity of the fish, then it comes out through the gills wherein exchange of gases will be enabled. And fish contains only heart which has only 2 divisions, and that will be used only for pumping the deoxygenated blood to the gills, and exchange of gases will take place near the gill surface, which is very delicate surface which enables the exchange of gases. In case of amphibians, amphibians are animals which can survive both on land and in water also. So they have different modes of respiration. For example, if you take amphibians like a frog, a classical example, amphibians can take up respiration through their skin also when they are in water. So this exchange of gases in case of by using skin is called as cutaneous respiration. So cutaneous, cutaneous. So cutaneous is a term which is related to skin. So whenever there is respiration through skin, you call it as cutaneous respiration. And frogs, when they are on the land, or amphibians when they are on land, they can use their lungs also for respiration. So that you term it as pulmonary respiration. So pulmonary respiration is respiration which is done with the help of lungs. And they also have buccopharyngeal mode of respiration, wherein they use their thin lining of the buccopharyngeal cavity in order to exchange the gases. Next we talk about insects. So insects also are a little bit smaller organisms, wherein they have small holes on the body surface, wherein you call them as spiracles, and spiracles lead into connected tubes which you call them as trachea, and these will be enabling exchange of gases. But in case of insects, as the oxygen will go directly in contact with the cells because they have an open circulatory system, so it enables exchange of gases to the cells itself. But other cases we have definite cells or definite organ tissues and organs which are taking up this respiration process. Now let us understand how respiration is taken up in case of humans. Coming to understand respiration in humans. So you know humans are complex organisms and there is a definite system for respiration which comprises of the lungs as well as the associated structures. Okay, so coming to respiration in humans, the respiration process or entry of air into the human body happens through nostrils. So nostrils are the two openings of the nose which act as inlets for the air which is rich in oxygen. So you know when air is inhaled inside, it contains 21% of oxygen and 0.04% of carbon dioxide along with other gases. So complete air enters into the respiratory system through nostrils and enters the nasal chamber. So nasal chamber is the chamber which is the chamber from the nostrils to the end of the nose. Okay. So here in nasal chambers there are some adaptations in order to filter the impurities which can be present in the air which is inhaled. So those two structures are the nasal hair. So these act as the filters for the impurities. Dust or any other particles which have entered along with the air will be filtered by the nasal hair. And the mucus glands are present in the nasal chambers which secrete a sticky substance which you call it as mucus. Mucus also traps the bacteria as well as the dust which has entered into the respiratory system through the air. Further, there is also extensive supply of blood vessels to the nasal chamber which helps in maintaining the temperature of the air to that of the body temperature. So once through the nasal chamber the air enters into the pharynx. So pharynx is a common passage for both your buccal cavity as well as the nasal cavity. So in the pharynx there are you find two openings, that is one is called as the glottis. Glottis is the opening which leads to the windpipe, and gullet is the opening which leads to the esophagus. So gullet leads to esophagus which is a continuation of your digestive system, but glottis leads to the respiratory system. So at the junction of this glottis you have a flap like thin membranous flap like structure which is called as epiglottis. So this epiglottis is the structure which prevents the entry of food while swallowing. So by mistake it should not go into the windpipe. So this epiglottis will close the glottis area or the windpipe when food is swallowed. Got it? So further it leads to trachea, and trachea branches to bronchi and bronchioles as well as alveolus. So these are the main structures in our respiratory system. Now let us understand in detail how respiration process will take place in human beings. So as we understood that the air which is maintained to the body temperature enters into the pharynx region, and further it enters the body through trachea. So trachea is the main windpipe here, and this trachea is modified. How it is modified? So it contains C-shaped, incompletely formed here C-shaped cartilaginous rings will be present. So what is the importance of the cartilaginous rings which are present in trachea? So trachea is a tube like structure, as you know. So air when it passes through any tube it exerts pressure. So if these cartilaginous rings are not present, then it would have undergone pressure wherein trachea would have, the walls would have collapsed or stick to each other. So in order to avoid that, the C-shaped rings of the cartilaginous rings which are present in a trachea will maintain the definite shape in the windpipe, wherein they allow easy movement of air into the respiratory system. Now this trachea further branches out into bronchi, two divisions which are called as bronchi. So left bronchi will enter into the left lung, and right bronchi will enter into the right lungs. So these lungs are cone shaped organs, you can just see, which are present protected in the chest cavity. So these lungs, the right lung will have 3 lobes and the left lung will have 2 lobes. They are overall protected by protective membranes which are called as pleural membranes. So 2 layers of pleural membranes will be there, and between that pleural membranes you also have a protective fluid which is called as pleural fluid. So that will protect it from friction as well as from any injuries, mechanical injuries which may damage the lungs. Okay, so further this is also protected by cage like bones and made up of bones and intercostal muscles, which you call it as the rib cage. So coming back to your bronchi, so bronchi divides further into finer divisions, which you call it as bronchioles. So there are primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles and tertiary bronchioles. So these bronchioles will end up into sac like structures or balloon like structures, which are called as alveoli. So these are the sites of gaseous exchange. Now when wind passes or air passes through this bronchi, finally it reaches alveoli, and this alveoli will have a very thin layer of epithelium which facilitates the exchange of gases, and these alveoli are surrounded by extensive network of blood vessels which take up gaseous exchange. So as you know, the air which enters into the lungs is rich in oxygen. You know, there is 21% of oxygen, and here there will be exchange of gases. In overall human body, there are two types of gaseous exchange in case of humans. So that is pulmonary gaseous exchange as well as peripheral gaseous exchange. So first let us understand what is pulmonary gaseous exchange. So when air enters into this lungs through the bronchioles, it fills the alveoli. So alveoli are balloon like structures or the sac like structures, what we just told, and these have a very thin surface which can enable exchange of gases. So these alveoli are surrounded by blood vessels. Extensive network of blood vessels will be there which can take up the gaseous exchange. So this blood or the veins which would have carried the carbon dioxide rich blood or the carbon dioxide which has been collected from the body cells, the carbon dioxide will diffuse into the alveoli and oxygen will be taken up by the blood. So this oxygen, when it has to be taken up by the blood, simple diffusion is not enough to supply the oxygen to the whole body, because it takes a long time if the body depends only on diffusion. So there's a respiratory pigment which enables the picking of oxygen and supply of oxygen, and that respiratory pigment is nothing but hemoglobin. So you know, hemoglobin is a red colored pigment which is present in RBC or the red blood cells, or what we term it as erythrocytes. So this hemoglobin picks up oxygen, forming oxyhemoglobin, and further it is sent to, after it is oxidized and oxygen is exchanged, the blood is sent to the heart will pump the blood to the body cells, and in the body cells again there is exchange of gases. So when it reaches body cells will take up this oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. So this is this exchange of gases which takes place near the cells or tissues is what you call it as peripheral gaseous exchange. Once the exchange of gases takes place in the cells, again the carbon dioxide rich blood is brought to the heart, and through heart it is again brought to the lungs for gaseous exchange. So that is about respiration in case of humans. So once again, let us have a short recap about respiration. We told that respiration starts, or the exchange of gases starts in case of nose or in nasal chambers. So when it enters into the windpipe, which has a C-shaped cartilaginous rings in order to keep it intact, and further it branches to two branches, bronchioles and bronchi and bronchioles you have, and bronchioles will lead into alveoli, wherein it takes up exchange of gases. Okay, so that is the thing. And here, along with exchange of gases over here, there is always some amount of air which is always kept inside the lungs here. So that is necessary in order to protect the lungs, or in order to maintain the healthy condition of the lungs, not to allow the alveoli to collapse. So that volume of air which is always retained in the lungs is what you term it as residual volume of air. So this residual volume of air is very important, and you also have to keep in your mind what is the concentration of carbon dioxide in inhaled air and exhaled air. So in inhaled air you have 0.04%, and in exhaled air it will be more than 100 times. So that is approximately 4% of carbon dioxide will be present in exhaled air. Apart from the main lungs, which are the respiratory organs here, there are some other structures which are helping respiration in case of human beings. So those are two main structures. One is the diaphragm, which is a highly muscular structure which is present at the base of the lungs, which separates the abdominal organs from the thoracic organs. So that is diaphragm. And also you have the ribs, which are the protective cage which is present around the lungs. Now how do these two structures help in respiration? Let us understand. First, diaphragm, here it has two types of structures or two places it can take. So one is the flat structure and another one it is the dome structure. So dome shaped structure is the original structure. So when inhalation takes place, when you just take in air like this, you can see that the diaphragm will move down and becomes flat, enabling the expansion of the lung space lengthwise. Okay, and even the rib muscles or the rib cage expands from its original position, creating a space forward also, so that air gets filled and the lungs can undergo expansion to accumulate the air inside them. Then when air is expired out or exhaled out, then what happens is this diaphragm comes back to its dome shaped structure in order to push the air out, and the ribs will go back to their original position. So this is how diaphragm as well as ribs will enable the process of respiration in case of humans. Children, hope you have understood respiration process in case of humans. So let us have a short recap of your three common features for respiratory organs in case of higher organisms. So first thing what should be present is a large surface area should be present to get enough oxygen. So that is the first point, which is deliberately present in the lungs and other respiratory organs of higher organisms, and there should be thin walls for easy diffusion and exchange of gases. So same thing, thin walls, very thin membranes are present in alveoli in case of humans for easy diffusion of gases and exchange of gases. So diffusion is in case of carbon dioxide, easily it will diffuse into the plasma of the blood, and oxygen is taken up by hemoglobin as in case of humans. But there is a thin wall, definitely there is thin wall, and there should be rich supply of blood for the transport of gases. So except in case of organisms wherein air will reach directly to the cells, there is no need of such a rich supply of blood, because directly it can reach, but otherwise there should be rich supply of blood which is deliberately present in case of human beings. So that's it related to respiration. Hope you have understood all the concepts. Thank you for listening.
ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ವಿಡಿಯೋಗಳು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಬೆಲ್ ಐಕನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋ ವಿಡಿಯೋಗಳ ನೋಟಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಮೊದಲು ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿ ಸಂದೇಹಗಳಿದ್ರೆ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಿಳಿಸಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ತರಗತಿಗಳು ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ತಲುಪುವಂತೆ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ.